Imagine for a moment that everything you thought you knew about the most famous figure in history, Jesus Christ, was about to be challenged. What if there existed a long-lost letter written by a Roman official who had seen Jesus with his own eyes? A letter that described in vivid detail not just the man's teachings, but his appearance, his face, his eyes, his very presence. Now picture that letter, hidden for centuries, unearthed in a forgotten monastery, its contents shaking the foundation of what we've believed for thousands of years. This is no fictional account. The letter is real, and its author, Aurelius Linus, a Roman officer, claims to have observed Jesus personally, even reporting his observations back to Caesar in Rome. What did this Roman see? How does his description of Jesus differ from the images we've known for so long? Today we begin a journey that could change everything you thought you knew about Jesus Christ. By the time we're done, your perception of him may never be the same. But who was Aurelius Linus? A Roman of considerable standing, Linus served under Emperor Tiberius during the tumultuous period of Jesus' crucifixion. A man of power and influence, Linus was no stranger to the political machinations of Rome, nor to the rumors that swirled around the man called Jesus of Nazareth. Unlike the religious leaders or Roman soldiers who often saw Jesus as a threat or rebel, Linus approached him with a different perspective. His letters to Caesar recount moments of close observation, suggesting not only curiosity, but perhaps an admiration for the man who stirred the people of Judea. What could Linus have seen that moved him to write so diligently to Caesar? Was it mere duty, or something deeper? Through his eyes, we begin to see a new side of Jesus, one we have never known. This letter stands as a potential game-changer, unlike any other historical account. While the Bible gives us spiritual insight into Jesus' life, it leaves much of his physical appearance to the imagination. What we know, or rather think we know, has often been shaped by centuries of Western art: pale skin, soft features, flowing hair. However, Aurelius Linus, a contemporary of Jesus, offers a rare and intimate description of what he actually looked like. His words hold weight because they come from a man who lived, breathed, and walked in the same world as Jesus. This letter provides a tangible bridge between ancient history and modern faith. But more than that, it challenges us to reconsider how we've always envisioned Christ. Throughout history, artistic depictions of Jesus have cemented a specific image in the minds of believers worldwide. From stained glass windows to grand paintings, we've come to expect a serene figure with flowing brown or blonde hair, pale skin, and often piercing blue eyes. But where did this image come from? Aurelius Linus's letter reveals something startling. Jesus looked nothing like the familiar paintings. As we peel back layers of historical bias, we find that many of our assumptions may have been far from the truth. Could it be that we have been seeing Christ through the wrong lens for centuries? This revelation invites us to shed the illusions and confront the reality of Jesus' true form. Before we dive deeper into the letter, let's step back in time. Jesus lived in a land under Roman occupation, a land where the clash between faith and empire was constant. Roman soldiers patrolled the streets, and the tension between Jewish leaders and the people simmered. Aurelius Linus, stationed in Judea, was not just a passive observer. He walked the same roads as Jesus, saw the crowds that gathered to hear his teachings, and likely stood in the shadow of the crucifixion. Understanding the political and cultural climate of this time is crucial to grasping the full weight of Linus's words. What he saw was not merely a religious figure, it was a man moving through a charged, hostile world. Linus begins his letter with a focus on Jesus' face. Noble, he writes, yet expressive. Unlike the idealized, almost ethereal figures found in Renaissance art, Linus describes a man whose face held both grace and strength. His features were defined, expressive, a face that communicated without words. This was not a face of otherworldly beauty, but one of profound presence. According to Linus, there was a solemnity to Jesus, but beneath that seriousness was a warmth that invited trust. His face reflected the struggles of a man who had walked among the people, yet there was wisdom and kindness etched into every line. One of the most striking differences between Linus's description and traditional depictions is Jesus's hair. Linus writes of light, slightly wavy hair that had never been cut, far from the shoulder-length locks seen in countless paintings. His beard, almost blonde, was short, not long and flowing as we've often been shown. This may seem like a minor detail, but it speaks volumes. It grounds Jesus as a real, tangible person, a man who walked the dusty streets of Judea, not the polished and perfected figure of Western art. Could this be the image of a carpenter who worked with his hands, traveled on foot, and lived among everyday people? But it was Jesus' eyes that struck Linus the most. He describes them as intense, a blue so piercing that they seem to look right through you. Linus writes that these eyes were not cold or distant but deeply aware, as though they could see into the very soul. What must it have been like to look into the eyes of Jesus? According to Linus, there was a sense of knowing in them, a profound understanding that left no room for pretense. This was a man who saw everything, not just the world around him, but the hearts of those he met. Jesus' height and build, as described by Linus, also challenge conventional images. Tall, with strong physical proportions, Jesus was a man who stood out not just for his teachings, but for his presence. This wasn't the fragile, delicate figure we often see in paintings. Instead, Linus paints a picture of a man who likely had the build of someone who had worked with his hands for years, a carpenter who knew the weight of wood and stone. His physical stature, according to Linus, matched the strength of his spirit. Jesus was not only a spiritual guide, but a man who commanded attention, even without saying a word. And yet, despite his commanding presence, Jesus radiated gentleness. Linus emphasizes that Jesus was neither severe nor arrogant. His neck was slightly inclined, giving him a humble posture, an approachable figure who never lorded his authority over others. In Linus's eyes, Jesus embodied grace. His serious expression spoke of wisdom, but it was always tempered with kindness. There was a softness in his demeanor, a gentle strength that set him apart from the powerful men of Rome. As we explore how Jesus was depicted in the earliest forms of Christian art, it becomes clear that the image of Christ we see today is far removed from how he was originally portrayed. In the catacombs of Rome, Jesus appeared as a beardless young man, often carrying a lamb on his shoulders, a symbol of his role as the Good Shepherd. These early depictions focused not on his physical appearance but on his mission, guiding his flock with humility and love. This youthful, gentle portrayal suggests that early Christians saw Jesus more as a protector and a symbol of purity, rather than a man of great physical power. This is a far cry from the towering, bearded figure we later see in Byzantine and Renaissance art. What changed? Why did the image of Jesus evolve so dramatically over the centuries? As we continue to study Aurelius Linus's description, we must ask ourselves, which image feels closer to the truth? In the 4th century, the image of Jesus began to shift significantly. No longer the young shepherd, Jesus was now depicted with a beard, seated on a throne, and often draped in royal robes. This transformation coincided with the Roman Emperor Constantine's legalization of Christianity, making it the dominant faith in the empire. With newfound security and power, Christians began to elevate Jesus' image to align more with imperial authority. In Byzantine art, we see Jesus not just as a spiritual leader, but as a ruler, God incarnate. His long hair and beard became symbols of wisdom and authority, modeled after Roman and Greek gods like Zeus. This new image of Christ, powerful and eternal, reinforced the idea of Jesus as King of Kings. But as we compare this regal depiction to Linus's description, we are reminded that the real man may have been far more humble in appearance. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, the cultural influences of Greek and Roman art began to shape how Jesus was depicted. The bearded, long-haired image of Christ was heavily influenced by portrayals of gods like Zeus and philosophers who were often shown with wise, contemplative expressions. This association with divine and intellectual authority added a layer of power to Jesus' image. In fact, By the time we reach the 5th century, Jesus was often shown enthroned, radiating glory and majesty. But Linus's description offers something more grounded, a man whose features were not crafted to emulate gods, but reflected a real, living person. It raises an interesting question. Did early Christian artists feel the need to make Jesus look more divine to appeal to Roman and Greek sensibilities? And if so, how much of his true appearance was lost in translation? Perhaps the most famous and controversial image associated with Jesus is the Shroud of Turin, a piece of cloth many believe was used to wrap his crucified body. The shroud appears to bear the faint outline of a man with long hair, a beard, and a peaceful expression. For centuries, believers have looked to this relic as the most accurate representation of Jesus' face. Yet, even the authenticity of the shroud has been questioned. Modern forensic scientists debate whether the image was naturally imprinted or later fabricated. Linus's description of Jesus' features doesn't entirely match the man in the shroud. This discrepancy invites us to consider how we determine the truth about historical figures. Can we trust relics from antiquity, or are written accounts like Linus's more reliable? The mystery of the shroud continues to fuel both faith and skepticism. The Bible, while rich with spiritual and moral guidance, offers little detail about Jesus' physical appearance. Linus, on the other hand, provides a vivid description of a man he saw frequently. This raises an intriguing point. Why did the Gospel writers leave out any mention of what Jesus looked like? Was his appearance considered unimportant compared to his teachings? For centuries, this lack of physical detail has allowed believers to project their own image of Jesus, an image often influenced by culture, race, and personal interpretation. Linus, however, strips away the myth and presents a human being. As we analyze his letter, we must reconcile this detailed account with the Bible's spiritual focus. Perhaps Linus saw something that the Gospel writers felt was unnecessary to record, a man who looked like one of us but carried within him the power to change the world. Throughout Christian history, many theologians have emphasized that the importance of Jesus lies not in his physical appearance, but in what he represented. For early church figures like St. Augustine, the face of Christ was symbolic, different for every believer, shaped by their spiritual relationship with him. It was this personal connection, rather than any physical traits, that mattered most. Aurelius Linus's letter challenges this symbolic approach by offering a detailed, real-world description. But perhaps both perspectives can coexist. Jesus' appearance, as Linus described it, could be seen as a reflection of his humanity. Yet in the spiritual realm, his essence transcends mere physicality. For those who needed a shepherd, he appeared as a guide. For those seeking salvation, he was a sacrificial lamb. His essence, as eternal and divine, adapted to the needs of his followers while remaining constant in his mission. The Bible offers a profound, though cryptic clue about Jesus' appearance in Isaiah 53. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. This passage has often been interpreted to suggest that Jesus was ordinary in appearance, blending in with those around him. But does this align with Linus's description of a man with noble features and piercing blue eyes? It's possible that Isaiah's prophecy speaks to something deeper than physical beauty. Perhaps the lack of majesty refers to the way Jesus humbled himself, forsaking worldly glory for a higher purpose. Linus, as an outsider, might have seen Jesus' face as noble, yet the essence of his being was rooted in humility. The contrast between Linus's account and Isaiah's words invites us to reflect on the nature of true beauty, whether it is found in outward appearance or in the heart. Throughout history, Jesus has been depicted in many ways, depending on who is imagining him. For some, he is a gentle shepherd, for others a powerful king. St. Augustine once remarked that each person visualizes Jesus differently, shaped by their own spiritual experience. This idea of personal interpretation has allowed Jesus to be many things to many people, across time and cultures. But what happens when we encounter a detailed description like Linus's? Does it challenge or enrich our personal vision of Jesus? For centuries, people have found comfort in the image of Christ that resonates with them. Linus, however, offers a glimpse into a very specific reality, a flesh and blood man. Can we reconcile these different images of Jesus? Perhaps in the end, it's not about the face we imagine, but the life and teachings that unite all believers. As Christianity spread across the world, each culture shaped the image of Jesus in its own way. In Africa, Jesus is often depicted with dark skin and Afro-textured hair. In Asia, he appears with distinctly East Asian features. In Latin America, he may be shown with a mixture of indigenous and European traits. These diverse representations reflect a global desire to see Jesus as part of the local identity, rather than a distant foreign figure. Aurelius Linus's account may seem at odds with these depictions, but it highlights an important point. Every culture seeks to bring Jesus closer to their own experience. Linus saw Jesus as a man of Judea, with the features of someone from that land. In a sense, each depiction, whether from Linus or from art around the world, tells us more about how deeply people connect with the story of Jesus. It's not just about how he looked, but how he made people feel. When we ask, what did Jesus look like? Are we really seeking the physical details or something more? Aurelius Linus gives us an answer grounded in reality, a description of a man with defined features, intense eyes, and a presence that was both noble and kind. But perhaps this description is only part of the picture. Throughout the ages, believers have sought to see Jesus in a deeper way, not through portraits or relics, but through spiritual connection. As Bishop Eusebius of Jerusalem once said, Jesus appears in different ways to each person, according to their needs. For some, he is a beacon of joy. For others, a guide through suffering. Linus saw a man, but what he truly witnessed may have gone beyond mere physicality. To see Jesus is to see both the human and the divine intertwined. In recent years, forensic anthropology has offered a new approach to understanding Jesus' appearance. Using advanced techniques, scientists have reconstructed what they believe is the most accurate depiction of a first-century Jewish man, based on skulls from the region of Judea. These reconstructions present a man with short, curly hair, olive-toned skin, and dark eyes, quite different from the long-haired, fair-skinned depictions found in Western art. This scientific method allows us to glimpse the physical reality of Jesus' time. But how does this align with Aurelius Linus's description of a man with lighter hair and piercing blue eyes? Could Linus's account have been influenced by Roman ideals of beauty, or is there more to this mystery? These modern reconstructions provide an intriguing counterpoint to Linus's letter, leaving us to wonder how much cultural context influences the way we perceive historical figures. Taking a closer look at the anthropological evidence, we find that the average man in first-century Judea was quite different from the Jesus seen in many popular depictions. Skeletal remains from the region show that most men stood around 5 feet 5 inches tall, with sturdy, muscular builds. This suggests that Jesus, a carpenter who worked with his hands, would have likely had a strong, well-built frame. Linus's description of Jesus being tall and graceful might have reflected his Roman perspective, where height and physical presence were often seen as marks of nobility. For the people of Judea, Jesus may have appeared less physically imposing, but his strength came from his wisdom and spiritual authority. This blend of anthropological fact and Linus's observations helps us build a more complete picture of Jesus, both as a man and as a figure of reverence. Using forensic data and ancient texts, modern researchers suggest that Jesus had darker skin, likely olive-toned, with dark eyes and short curly hair. This image of Jesus, reconstructed with the help of skulls from the region, gives us a glimpse into what a typical Jewish man of that time might have looked like. While this representation aligns with historical evidence, it challenges centuries of artistic depictions. Linus, however, describes a man with lighter features, a possible reflection of how Romans idealized appearance or perhaps a testament to how personal perception shaped his memory. Could Linus have seen something different in Jesus, something that transcended ordinary physicality? These questions remind us that even factual evidence can only tell part of the story. Jesus was more than his appearance. He embodied a message that changed the world. In one of the most fascinating developments, scientists have used CT scans to analyze first-century skulls from the region around Jerusalem. These scans provide detailed information about the bone structure of men from that time, allowing researchers to reconstruct the shape of their faces with remarkable accuracy. The results present a face that is far from the idealized, westernized versions of Jesus we are familiar with. Instead, the man scientists reconstructed had broad cheekbones, a prominent nose, and deep-set eyes. His short, coarse hair and olive skin paint a picture of someone who looked very much like the people of his time and place. While Linus's description differs in many ways, the combination of historical and scientific evidence offers a grounded human perspective of Jesus. The true complexity of his appearance lies somewhere between these accounts, blending science with the personal testimony of those who knew him. One of the most telling moments in the Gospels occurs in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Judas Iscariot identifies Jesus to the soldiers by kissing him. This detail is significant. It suggests that Jesus looked like an ordinary man, not someone who stood out physically among his disciples. Judas needed to mark him with a kiss because Jesus blended in so well with the people around him. This scene aligns with the description in Isaiah, which says that Jesus had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. But it also raises questions about Linus's description. How could someone who had such distinct features, piercing blue eyes, a noble expression, go unnoticed? Perhaps the key lies in understanding that Jesus' true power didn't come from his physical appearance. In the quiet garden, surrounded by his disciples, his inner light, not his outward form, was what truly distinguished him. Fast forward to the 20th century, and one of the most famous images of Jesus is Warner Sallman's Head of Christ, created in 1940. With soft, flowing hair, gentle features, and a compassionate gaze, this painting has become a cultural icon, shaping the way millions of people envision Jesus. It is a serene, comforting image, a face that radiates peace. However, as we compare Sallman's Christ with Aurelius Linus's description, the differences are stark. Sallman's painting reflects an idealized Western vision of Jesus, while Linus offers a raw, personal account of a man with far more human traits. Both images speak to the desire to see Jesus as someone familiar, but each represents a different aspect of how faith intersects with imagination. Sallman's work continues to be cherished, but Linus's account reminds us that Jesus was, above all, real, a man who walked this earth, seen through the eyes of history. In the 21st century, new discoveries and cultural shifts have led to a reimagining of how Jesus is depicted. As forensic science and historical research challenge traditional images, more people are embracing the idea of a Jesus who looks like the people of his time: darker skin, short hair, and a sturdier build. This shift is not just about historical accuracy, it's about reclaiming the humanity of Jesus. Aurelius Linus's letter offers us a glimpse into the past, but it also pushes us to think critically about how we visualize Jesus today. In an age where representation matters more than ever, the face of Christ is being re-envisioned to reflect a broader, more inclusive world. Yet, as our views change, the essence of Jesus remains the same. His message of love, forgiveness, and redemption transcends any physical image. As we navigate these varying depictions of Jesus, one truth becomes clear. Faith is not dependent on how we imagine his face. Whether we picture him as a tall, graceful figure or as a man who blended in with his peers, the power of Jesus lies not in his physical appearance, but in his teachings and sacrifice. Aurelius Linus's description gives us a new perspective, but it does not change the core of who Jesus was. For many believers, the image of Jesus is secondary to the relationship they have with him. It is through faith, prayer, and spiritual connection that the true essence of Jesus is revealed. Whether he is seen through the lens of art, history, or personal experience, what matters most is his role as the Savior, Linus's account adds richness to our understanding, but ultimately, it is the heart that recognizes Jesus. In the final part of Aurelius Linus's letter, we find his personal reflection on Jesus. He speaks not only of the man's appearance, but of the profound impact he had on those who encountered him. Linus describes a presence that was far greater than any physical trait, an inner light that seemed to draw people in. His letters to Caesar reveal that despite the political and religious tensions of the time, there was something undeniably special about this man from Nazareth. For Linus, seeing Jesus was more than an observation. It was an experience. His final words in the letter suggest that, even as a Roman official, he recognized the power in Jesus' humility, kindness, and wisdom. This testimony, preserved across centuries, offers us a rare glimpse into the thoughts of someone who knew Jesus personally. Linus leaves us with the sense that the man he saw was not just an ordinary figure, but one who changed the course of history. As we close this journey through Aurelius Linus's letter, we are left with a deeper understanding of the many faces of Jesus, from the noble figure Linus described, to the humble man depicted in the Gospels, to the reconstructions of modern science. Jesus remains a figure of enduring mystery. His physical appearance may continue to elude us, but his message is as clear as ever. In the end, it may not matter what Jesus looked like. What matters is the impact he had, and continues to have, on the world. Linus' letter provides a glimpse into the past, but Jesus' influence stretches far beyond the boundaries of time, culture, and imagination. As believers, we may never fully know what Jesus looked like, but we can be certain of one thing: his teachings, his sacrifice, and his love are what truly define him. Click now on the video appearing on the screen to learn more about the subject. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel now.